Good evening, folks. You're all very welcome to this evening's special lockdown chats edition. We have a comic colorist panel. We've some of Ireland's top comic colorists and doing some amazing work. I just want to thank a few people. I want to thank Kildare County Council for sponsoring the podcast through the Arts Act grant, and also the Laois County Council Arts Act grant and Creative Ireland Laois. And also our partners, the June Fest Newbridge, who are available on junefest.ie, and the Dunamaze Arts Centre, who are our home in our Laois base in Port Laois. So with all that stuff out of the way, I just introduced the panel here. So Mr. D. Cuniff, how are you, sir?
Doing good, how are you?
Not too bad. Do you want to just give us an introduction to yourself, D, some of the projects you do and all that sort of stuff?
Well, I work on lots of books at the moment. I'm working on Crossover, Runaways. I'm working on House of L, graphic novel series, and lots of stuff that I'm just working on that's not going to be out for years. So there's plenty of that happening.
Really? That's always a bit mad. I always thought it was a bit hand to mouth how all that.
Well, yeah, sometimes you're working on a daily deadline where it's, oh, I've got to get it done now. And sometimes you're up against something that won't be seen for another 2 or 3 years.
Very good. That's all very interesting. So next up is Trina Farrell. How are you?
Hi, how you doing? I'm Trina Farrell. I'm working on a bunch of things, much like Dee as well. Some things. I'm working on a new Shang-Chi book. What else am I working on? Oh god, there's so much. I'm working on Sleeping Beauties with the new Stephen King and Owen King book. I have some things coming out from Aftershock soon. There's a whole bunch of Image titles I'm on as well. So a lot of hands and different pies as you do. So yeah, that's me.
Very good. Thanks very much. And Rebecca, how are you?
Hello, I'm pretty good. So I'm Rebecca Nalty. I'm also a colorist. I'm also working on a bunch of stuff, a lot of stuff that hasn't been announced yet, but currently working on Star Wars The High Republic Adventures with IDW, which has been a lot of fun. And I actually think everything else I'm currently working on hasn't been announced, so I can't really say anything else. But yeah, bunch of stuff. Yeah,
no problem. And yourself, Darla, how are you?
Not too bad at all. I'm Darla Kelly. I'm a colorist, and I'm also working on a bunch of stuff. So I color Red Sonja, which I'm actually just finishing up soon. Deja Thoris. I just finished I Walk with Monsters at Vault, and Pantomime at Mad Cave. I'm working on a graphic novel that's coming out through Simon & Schuster next year, I think, and then a few projects that are also unannounced or in the works. So yeah, lots of bits and pieces.
Very good. And yourself, Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I am Chris, and I'm a colorist. It's a bit of a addiction meeting kind of vibe, isn't it? I'm doing Ice Cream Man, I suppose, the main one with Image. It's coming up to issue 25, so that's like the longest thing I've been on. Bits and pieces for Marvel. Time Before Time from Image. That's with Declan Shalvey and Rory McConville, other Irish people. What else am I working on?
So hard to remember.
I could barely know what I'm working on tomorrow, if you know what I mean. I think they're all the same, really. But yeah, I've got 2 Image books that aren't out yet, and some graphic novels that aren't going to be announced yet either.
We're just wondering, are you looking at the bookshelf or are you looking out the window for inspiration there?
I'm looking at my whiteboard and random comps that are fired into the corner. See if there's something that'll refresh my memory. But no, I think that they're the main things.
Very good. So Dee, how are you, sir?
And
yeah, so Dee, you've been in the game for a while now. Do you want to just tell us how you started?
Well, I'm probably older by about, I'd say, 30 years than everybody else on this. Is there anyone above 30?
I am 30. I'm nearly 31, so.
Anyone above 40?
I'm over 40D, so I'm
Oh,
bridging
okay.
the gap
Is
there
there
for you.
anyone nearly 50?
Those people don't exist.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I spent years working as a graphic designer, and I ran a art department in an advertising agency, and it kind of got on too much for me, and I was kind of not into the work anymore, and I was going to sit back going, look, what are my skills? What have I done the last few years, hobby wise? Like I can maybe get into, and I've been since I think I colored my first thing in about 1995 on like Photoshop 2 or something like that, and my first paid comic coloring was in '98 for In Dublin magazine. I was doing a monthly comic strip with them, and then it kind of fell to the side for a good 15 years, and I kind of thought, well, I'm okay at color. I have all the skills and stuff like that. So I decided I'd give comic coloring a go again. And I just sent around emails around to people that I would love to have worked with, people like Lee Lockridge and Matt Wilson and Dave Stewart and stuff. And just saying, that I want to get into the game. How do I do it? And they were all really great, and they contacted me back, and I ended up flatting for all of them for years. I still flat for Lee and for and Matt, and they're great mentors. They taught me how to do what I'm doing now, and they've been very supportive. Like a whole list of colorists over the years have been really supportive, and so I was flatting for about 5 or 6 years, just that was my job, but there was no money in it, and there was
You
huge.
want to just explain to people what flatting is, please?
Flatting is a stage in coloring where when the line art comes in black and white, a flatter is kind of it's a highly skilled job, but it's not seen on the page. It's basically you're separating out the elements of the page that make it in Photoshop, that make it easier for the colorists to come in and use the magic wand to select those areas to apply their own color and render and stuff like that. So it's the least paid job in comics, and kind of the most turnover, and it's a tough job, but
mind-numbing job.
Mind-numbing. But I for the first, I'd spent 10, 15 years working in advertising where it was just go, go, go. And it was actually nice to spend a couple of years just sitting down and nobody shouting at me or giving out to me or asking me to change stuff. So it is mind-numbing. And after a couple of years, I started using the skills I picked up from plotting to start coloring. And then just, you meet people along your journey that you work with, and you start getting better and better jobs and better paid. And, it takes a long time. I think I've been professionally coloring for about 8 years now. I think this is the first year that I've actually been comfortably paid. Up until now, it's been kind of okay, comfortable, but not being able to save. So it takes time. It's not something that you can just fall into suddenly being a really high paid job. And I don't think it ever does get to a stage where it's high paid, unless you guys are really high paid, are you?
I wish.
Pool together.
Now that's very interesting, Dee. So you were saying a few people kind of help you along the way. So what kind of things would you have learned, or what did you not know getting into it? Or
Well, like I still, even at this stage, if I'm struggling with a page or a cover or something like that, or I've just finished a book, and I'll still send it out to people like Lee Lockridge or Matt Wilson or Dave McCaig, and just get some crit from them. They'll always take time out to go through the PDFs or the page and maybe tell me, oh, you need to change this, or that this isn't clear, or I'm not sure what's going on. And I think you guys as well would be saying that if a younger person contacted you with looking for some opinions on work, that you'd take your time out as well, because it happens. Like every couple of weeks, somebody will reach out with a portfolio or with a piece looking for advice, and you'd be a heel if you didn't spend the time that other people spend on you, passing on advice or techniques or any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's very nice. And I would have thought it would have been a bit more less friendly and a bit more people kind of.
I don't think any of it's
No,
in
no.
competition at all. It's not a competition or a race. We're all
Yeah.
kind of, we're in this together.
No, that's very cool. Very cool. So just yourself, Trina, what was your journey into comics? I know you do some of your artwork for a couple of years, and how did you get to where you are now?
All right. So college didn't even kind of pass my mind. I kind of came out of college and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I did like a master's in like propaganda, basically, which is like academic, just and I
So
did history in college.
you mastermind Twitter, so you were ahead of
Yeah.
that game on that.
So it was funny actually. I was walking past used to live in Dundrum, and I was walking past Dice at the time. You know, the little mini comic convention that the Big Bang ran years back. And one of my friends, who I recognized him outside, was kind of, you should come in and you should share your portfolio. So, I just showed some crappy sketches to, like, the Marvel editors, and they clearly weren't too impressed, but it kind of implanted in my brain, kind of like, oh, this is something I could do. So kind of, I think about 2 years later, about a year or 2 years later, I got a contact from Boom, and what you call it, because there were some people, some of the older Irish people kind of handed me some emails and things like that. I think there's always a good culture sort of supporting each other, like especially in Ireland where the community is so tiny. But anyway, like so I got a contact from Boom, and I started doing Weavers with Cy Spurrier. And that was my first book, and it's like a ball. It just rolls. You get better. Your work gets better and better. You get better and better contacts. It kind of and you get, and 4 years later, you're like, oh, I have a career. Well, look at that. So that's kind of how it worked out for me anyway. So
Very good. So you're just saying off air that you've just purchased a house, and all very exciting times for you.
yeah, I just purchased a house out in Talis, so I'm very excited to get carpet. So that's my life. It's good.
So the next gig's for carpet, is it?
Yeah, we can only dream of carpet and higher paying wages.
Very good. So Rebecca, do you want to tell us your journey, please?
Of course. So my journey started in college. I studied animation in IADT, and kind of thought
So did
I
I, by
might.
the way.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, former IADT.
Oh no way. So when I was there, I kind of thought I'll get into storyboarding, because really why I wanted to do animation was because I just love storytelling in all forms. I love fictional worlds, characters, just in any form. It doesn't really matter. But then coincidentally, when I was in third year, Jordi Belair came to my college to do a talk about comic coloring, and I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. I didn't know that was something you could do and get paid to do it. And kind of around that time is when I discovered that I really liked color design, and that was something that I would have liked to pursue in animation. But it's not really a job you can get in Ireland. That would be more like kind of an LA job, really, I guess. And I didn't really have much intention of going there. I'd prefer to stay here. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind for a while, that I could maybe pursue comic coloring. And then after I graduated, I had a studio job for a little while. Wasn't too into it. I didn't love it. And then when I was in between contracts, it just so happened that Jordi was looking for interns for comic coloring. So I thought, I'll just apply for that and see what happens. Honestly, didn't think I'd get it. Happened to get it with Dervla, and it was wonderful. We had a great time. That was the best part, meeting Dervla, honestly.
So lovely.
So then I think less than a year, I'd say, into the internship, I got contacted by Boom to do Lady Castle with Becca Farrow, which was my first book. And it was so stressful and so scary, but I learned so much. And as Trina said, it kind of just snowballed a bit from there, I guess. And I think it's like 4 years on now, and things are going pretty good. Can't complain.
Very good, excellent. So, Darvla, you guys were in the same studio at the.
Yeah. So a little spoiler on my background there. Yeah. So I had studied visual communication in college, and then I was doing graphic design. I'd always kind of had an interest in comics, but I didn't really think it was something that was feasible as like a job or that you could do as an Irish person. And then I was working in the Irish Times after college as a designer and an illustrator. And then as I was there, I was doing more and more illustration, and kind of like it's actually a really good experience for comics in a way, because it was always such fast turnover. Like I'd have editors kind of coming and saying, we want this illustration for like tomorrow. And so I'd have to kind of, knock things out quite quickly and respond quite quickly. And then I remember I went to Offset one year, and Declan Shelby was doing a talk at it. And I was like, okay, this is a thing that Irish people can actually do quite successfully. And he talked actually about Geordie colouring his work during that as well. And then when my job at the Times came to an end, I was kind of trying to figure out what to do. And I was trying to do little bits of comics and stuff. And I ended up doing Declan's course at the Irish Writers Centre. And then from there, that's how I ended up hearing about Geordie's internship, which I applied for. It was kind of funny. I had a job interview on the same day as the internship interview, and I went to the job interview first. And I was like, just so you know, I'm going for this other thing later on today, and I still got the job. So I ended up working in part-time in a graphic design studio, and then part-time doing the internship, which was kind of it was a really fun mental time period. It was like the most millennial thing, because I'd be like finishing my design studio job, and then I'm going to get on the Lewis and go to my comics internship. And yeah, so from there I ended up getting some work with editor Nate Cosby, and then Ram V ended up approaching me about colouring Paradiso at Image, which was interesting because he didn't actually know I was doing the internship. I think he had just seen my work on Twitter. So yeah, it kind of went from there. And then I started doing it full time about 2 months before the pandemic. So that was a great move on my part.
Sure, listen, you're working from home, so you're ahead of the game by 2 months. You know what I mean? So you're. Just about yourself, Chris. How did you get into all this sort of crack?
I was doing a multimedia course in Cork, where I'm from, and I always liked comics and stuff, but I didn't think of people. Same as some of the other stories there. Like, you didn't know you could be from Ireland and work on it. But Will Sliney actually had done the course a few years before me, and he came in then to do a talk, and he was about to do a MacGyver comic or something like that, or he did soon after that. But that kind of got the ball rolling in my head. So I basically just hounded him for information, through various messages and stuff, for kind of years after. And then I found out about other Irish people were doing it and stuff like that. So I was it was really in my head. So after college, then I ended up doing web design for years, and I fucking hated it. I just really hated the kind of monotony of it, and how uncreative it was when you were doing just say, for example, a website for a travel company or something, and it was we need this, this, and this, and any kind of creative decisions were kind of shot down, or the reasons for everything. It was all very, very straight. And then that place eventually got bought by another place, and it was even more kind of factory kind of driven, that kind of line of it, so there wasn't much kind of going on in my head. I was just really bored all day, all the time. So I eventually quit and just said, I'm going to try and do comics for whatever savings I had at the time. And almost immediately, I was going to draw, sorry, that's what it was. I was going to be an artist. And somewhere between DICE and 2D, I had just gone to the wrong artists at the wrong time or something at two things, and they slated me, and they were one guy was really mean, and I just
Really?
completely turned me off drawing. Or I wasn't very good, but there was nothing encouraging came from one of the trips, and Geordie was talking at one or both of them, and I'd seen her work, and that just kind of I'd no idea about colors and stuff. So the girls were saying as well, that just kind of got me more interested in that, and I could just see the path for that a bit clearer, and just kind of started pushing towards coloring a bit more. So I think I did that for maybe 6 months, and eventually got invited by Geordie up to do kind of intensive kind of test course at the the two girls eventually did, I think, but like squished into like, I don't know, the 5 or 7 days maybe. So I stayed there, and it was for like a week, and she just kind of ran through everything with me. And it was like, it was really good, because it was like this immense pressure to like kind of take advantage of the time and to kind of learn everything. And like, I could see then what her like work life was like, or from like second to second, essentially, because I was like right next to her. And so I got like a really good like basis and like knowledge of like the ins and outs. I think like that the week I was there, she was starting Batman #1, that who wrote it? Tom King and David Finch's one. She was working on that. So I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I was like doing some crappy comic that some college guy was after writing and drawing, you know, on the side, that like never saw the light of day, to like that. And so like my skill level just like jumped up after that, like immediately. As soon as I got home as well, like everything I was doing was just like way better. And then like absolutely nothing to do with that, I got offered to do German Star Wars comic. So that's like being reprinted now in IDW. So it's like, I'm really cringe. I got to box them today, and I'm like, oh god, it's like 6 or 7 years old, and I better be careful what I say. But yeah, it's not as good as my work now, I'd say. And then separate to that, like it was all around the same in the same month, I think I got an email from Dynamite. A guy had seen my work on Twitter, and it was like nothing to do with like Geordie. She had like mentioned me to some editors, and so I was like going home waiting for those emails for the next year was my plan, kind of thing. But within the next month, I had like 3 jobs out of like nothing to do with it, and then something from a connection with her came through as well. So I was kind of swimming in it since then.
Very good. I can imagine it would have been fairly intimidating sitting beside Jordy doing her thing. And fair play to her. Like, she's a very busy lady. I've met her once or twice. But Dice definitely was the catalyst, Comic Con for creators anyway. It was definitely a different level, and it was actually the kind of inspiration for what we do in Celticon. It's all our thing is just kind of that kind of encouraging people. But yeah, a bit disappointed to hear an artist slating you like that, or like hopefully they were critical about your stuff and weren't just in a bad way.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I definitely caught one of them at a bad time, because when I told someone else about it, they were like, "Oh, that person is usually like really dead on," and was very encouraging to me.
Yeah,
Like other people were encouraging and stuff, but like probably too nice about it as well. So I needed kind of a reality kick as well. But like, I had no job for
Declan,
that.
wasn't it?
Huh?
It was Declan, wasn't it?
No, but he's probably the opposite, really. Like it's a lot of it's his fault. But like it was good in hindsight, because it was like, right, you're either going to spend 10 years trying to be a good artist, or you can like put this like same amount of effort and focus into coloring and have a job in that, and like half the time, whatever. No, it turned out to be like less than a year or whatever, but I had no way of knowing that. But in hindsight, it was great. Like, it worked out fine, no complaints. Like, I'd rather be, you know, like most of us here, I'd like to be working on like multiple books as opposed to one for 6 months or a year. Like,
I would think that would be much harder just to concentrate, or was it just a break that you'd think? Just mix
depends
it
what
up,
you're
is
on, I
it?
suppose.
Well, I think all of us work on multiple books, and it's part of, if you're an artist, you're working on maybe um, one book a month. But as a colorist, you're working on what? Maybe I might work on 5 or 6 a month. And
It's
I'd be-
yeah. Usually I'd be on about. I usually have like ongoing about 10 projects because everything is so dicey at the moment. But yeah, generally I try to keep it to about 5 or 6 books I color a month or so, just personally.
and then longer projects on top of that as well.
Yeah.
And do you find yourself, do you set aside, say, 4 days for this project and 4 days for this project? Or like me, I might spend 2 hours on one project and then jump for another 2 hours on another project, and
I really
I
have to focus, like hyper focus on like what I'm doing. So What I tend to do is I open 7 pages at once and I work at 7 pages at once because I'm
Oh.
just I know you kind of go panel by panel, but I need to work 7 pages at once.
I
My
could
poor
not do
computer.
that.
But yeah, I find it very difficult to jump from one project. And now like sometimes that calls for it because like what I tend to find is in the coloring world, it doesn't work out perfectly. Where you have this perfect schedule, you're kind of like, all right, the Marvel book 1 week, the DC book the 2nd week, and like the Image book the 3rd week. It never works like that. It will always be like,
Ever.
okay, the Marvel artist is sick, so it's being pushed back like 2 weeks, and then the DC artist, something happened there, they had to move the schedule, so now it's 2 months ahead. And the Image book is like, who knows? Image just decided to stop printing it, so that's not happening anymore. So I just find something else to fill that. There's a constant kind of shuffle
I
of
signed up to
things.
do this Kickstarter. The Kickstarter pages have come in, and then
Yeah, exactly. And then someone contacts you from like 2 years ago. We're kind of like, hey, by the way, we're starting that project now. It's kind of, where were you for 2 years? What was happening? Do you think I was waiting for you? But yeah, it's kind of the life of the colorist. It's just like I wish I had a proper schedule. I know Dave McCaig once said that kind of like, oh, I work like 2 years ahead, and I'm like, how? I guess if you're that in demand, like you can work 2 years ahead.
Very good. So Dee, what was your did you have a plan in school or coming out of it, or how did you just went into the graphic designs or the commercial stuff, or how did that work?
When I was I finished school when I was 16, and I went straight into Bolton Street to study architecture. And I'd been in boarding school, so coming out to college, I went mad and didn't perform as well as I should have in architecture. And I left after I was told to leave, and I did some graphics, a couple of graphic design courses, and then I got into computer animation in Ballyfermot in like 93 or 94, something like that. And I did a couple of years in computer animation, and it was just as computer games were really taking off, and the big plan was to be a computer game designer. But
That was really quite early. You must have been fairly techy back then, were you?
yeah, techish. I'd had, I had a PC since I got a ZX81 in 83, and I'd always had a computer. And then after I finished college and stuff, I kind of faffed around doing newspaper and magazine design and that type of thing. And then I got into advertising. I was in advertising for years. So comics were kind of always in the background. Like I had a huge collection of them, and I was playing around with coloring in Photoshop in the mid-90s, not knowing that, it was even pre-internet. So there was no way of emailing somebody to say, hey, how do I get a job? And it was just, as I said, when I finished advertising, when I was sick of advertising, finding a way of putting my skills and my interests together. So there was no plan when I left school in 1990, but in 2015 or so, or 2013, I said, well, okay, now I'm going to make comics. So
Very good. No, that must be a very scary thing at that stage. I know you have family life and children and stuff like that. So was it a big jump in, or had you tested the water a few
no,
times?
I was working and doing bits of comics on the side for a couple of years. And when I heard the announcement of the Sandman Overture book was coming out, I emailed Dave Stewart and said, hey, listen, Sandman is why I read comics. If you need, color assists or flatting or something, I'll do it. And he was great. He said, yeah, cool, I'll sign you up. And he signed me up to work in Overture. And I went straight to my boss and said, look, I'm leaving. Now, it wasn't a great paying job, but it was something that I knew that was going to take time. And I was quite willing to give up my job to work in the Sandman.
Very good. So Trina, just your own story. What were you kind of like in secondary school? Were you doing artwork, or was the comics in the plan back then, or?
Oh God, no. So I really was not much of a comic reader. I think that kind of probably when you're like an Irish woman back in like the early 2000s and 90s, you just like comics weren't really for me, you know. So like I read a lot of manga when I was in school myself. I probably read one or two things. Like somebody I think at one point recommended Watchmen to me when I was like 16, and I read that though, like, you know, I think I was 16 and didn't really understand this. Um but like no, I did a lot of art in secondary school. I grew up drawing all the time, and I the plan I think was to kind of go into art college at the time, but the way it worked out was I was meant to go to IDT, and then I came out of college, I came out of school just as the recession hit, so the points for IDT actually jumped by 200 that year. So I was like, so I didn't get in. And then my second thing was let's do history in college. So I did history for 3 years, and I came out and I wanted to do I have a very educated family. Like, oh, my two brothers are in Harvard. Like, so uh, they were kind of like, oh, let's go to like a master's level. So I went and I did basically critical art theory. So there was no practice in it. It was just literally I did a thesis, and I wrote some papers on Irish propaganda posters. And I came out then and I was like, wait, what now? I have no marketable skills whatsoever. So I was kind of considering sort of being a tutor for a while. And I was always just kind of drawing in the background. Kind of it was I would kind of do prints of my work, and I would sell them at the local Irish conventions and things like that. And so I kind of just kind of you fall into it. And like, not to say that I kind of did it all myself. I got a lot of help from a lot of the older Irish guys and Jordy Belair as well, who gave me a hand from like here and there, just kind of give me advice and things like that. But like, you know, I'm always a bit of a workhorse. I really enjoy working. Like at the moment, I kind of I manage my time between kind of doing the coloring, and I also teach academic critical theory at a local college in town as well. So like kind of lots of things in the air at the moment. But yeah.
Very good. That's
So,
pretty amazing. Thanks very much for sharing that. And Rebecca, do you want to tell us your story back in secondary school and what you were kind of up to?
I was a big nerd in secondary school. So I'm from Cork originally, Cork City. Yeah,
You're well repped tonight, anyway.
we really are. So I did not really read comics in secondary school. I definitely wanted to. I I had to make a choice in I had to make a choice in secondary school really to pretend that I was normal, which sounds bad, but I really wanted to just have an easy time of things, have friends, get through school okay. So there was a lot of stuff that I kept hidden. I kept my nerd side pretty hidden. I kept being gay very hidden. So didn't really get to experience a lot of the comic and nerdy side of things. Towards the end of school, I definitely did. That's when I kind of started getting into manga more and anime. Didn't tell anyone, of course. It was very secret. But a comic that I did actually keep up with in secondary school was an Italian Disney comic called Witch. I read that all through secondary school, and I loved
I
it so
love
much.
Witch. So good.
Fantastic.
Sorry to yeah, go on, but yeah.
It's so good. It's like a Western magical girl comic pretty much, and I just loved the art style so much. It really influenced the way I drew at the time. Maybe not so much anymore, but it holds such a special place in my heart, and that was kind of the one thing that I made sure that I kept up with. But yeah, had to keep that side hidden, as I said.
That's a tiny bit sad there. I hope these times are changed and all that sort of stuff. And I certainly wore the kind of weirdness as a badge of honor, and it was actually kind of my shield in some situations, you know. But Derbla, do you want to tell us your story, please? What
Yeah,
you were up to
so
in secondary school, and
Have a photo.
nerdy. I was a nerdy kid in secondary school, shockingly. Yeah, so my parents are both teachers, so they kind of weren't that pleased that art was kind of my focus. So because I thought it would be something that I would do for the junior cert and then like drop for the leaving cert because it wasn't like something you could get good points for the leaving cert. And then I got to transition and I was like, no, I love art, I still want to do it. And so I did it for the leaving cert and then decided this was it for me, so I wanted to go to art college, and then told my art teacher that I wanted to apply, but could he maybe not mention it to my parents? So me and my art teacher had this little like secret alliance going on to work on my portfolio to get into art college, and he was like, this is so uncomfortable for me because both your parents are on staff currently. So but he was really sound about it, and I never actually told them. I just kind of let it happen. But as far as comics in school, like I grew up in Monaghan. I'm in my parents' house in Monaghan right now. So there wasn't really a lot of availability of comics, and like I loved comics when I could get my hands on them, but that was pretty few and far between. So I read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes as a kid because I had a load of those, and then I ended up getting Sandman in my teens and was completely blown away. Got some more Neil Gaiman stuff. I was obsessed with Dave McKean. And yeah, I would kind of read little sporadic manga volumes that I would find as well. So on like trips to Dublin, I'd go really nervously into Sub City and whatever was there. But yeah, I didn't really know where to get comics, and so I ended up not actually really buying a lot of comics until kind of well after college, actually. And when I just started going to like, first of all, I got over my fear of going into comic shops and not knowing what things were, and I got a lot better just being like, hey, where are the things? What can I buy? Like, tell me more. And I'm going to Big Bang and stuff. And so yeah, now I spend too much money on comics, but yeah, the interest was always kind of there, and I was always drawing, and it was definitely, I think, the only thing I ever really wanted to do in some form or another. Yeah.
I have this thing about how precious comics were as a kid because you just couldn't get them.
Yeah.
I remember all those kind of 2000 AD were my thing, but you used to get it and you'd read it cover to cover, and you'd copy the artwork, and you just fall in love with it, and you'd keep those issues or those books that you loved. And same with music, like music on vinyl records and all the stuff. You used to read all the lyrics and do all the things, but nowadays it's so much easier to access stuff, and it just doesn't have that thing anymore. Or maybe
Yeah,
I'm just getting old.
My friends and I used to get the bus to Dublin, and we'd go to like HMV and get CDs and be like, oh, we got this today and I've been looking for this. So like, it's so funny to kind of, think back on that. But yeah, that was totally the thing with comics. Like I had, Beano annuals that I treasured, and I just didn't know where. I knew like one place or two places to get them, and that was it. And I was too nervous to ask for things, but like I really wanted to read more comics. Like I loved like all the X-Men cartoons and that stuff, and I just didn't know how to kind of find them. But yeah, it's a lot easier now, which is great.
Very good. It's a double-edged sword, though. It's kind of, there's too much of everything now. I find that I have 3 kids, but one's 12 now at the minute, and I just find her
Three too
very
many.
just. What's that?
3's too many, is it?
Oh, absolutely. The only thing I was clever, they would laugh at this now. There's 7 years between them. So my eldest is 19, and the next is 12, and then the next is 5. So 7-year gap.
We've 6 years between ours. So the eldest is 27, and then 21 and 14. So
Question mark.
Very good.
yeah, well,
Hopefully, I don't watch this.
Yeah, you laugh at this, Dave, but you try to explain to kids about phone boxes and not having mobile phones. And I remember being in college having to ring my grandmother and give like a half an hour notice, say I'd ring back in a half an hour, so she'd go down, get someone to come back up, and all this sort of craziness. But the thing about it, there's no phones, there's no camera. You can just do what you want, and no one had record of it. So I don't
jumpers
know.
for goalposts.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, what were you like in secondary school, Chris?
Kind of similar to some of the stories there. I did like art up until junior cert, and like up to then I was always like in primary school, like I was the kid in class that drew. So it's like, can you draw like whatever cartoons on or whatever, and you do like an attempt at that kind of thing. Then I had a bad time doing the junior cert one, something through. I had to choose for leaving cert. It was like history or art was the option in my school, and I love both. Like, but the art for the junior cert, we had to do like an essay on an artist or on something. And I was like, why the hell are we like writing? This is an art class, you know, and I had no interest in sculpting or stuff like that. The other kind of sides of art, just drawing. So I was like, well, I can just do that if I want to do that, and I'll do it if I really like it or whatever. So I'll just do history. And like the first day, the fucking art teacher came up and gave out to me, like, and I was like, well, I'm doing history, take that kind of thing. And like she'd been kind of, if you're the only one of the, you're one of the good people in the class, the rest are shocking kind of thing, or not everyone now, but like there was a lot of just kind of dossers, like, you know. So she was like really disappointed. So that all, even though I didn't do art then for the leaving cert, that always kind of stuck with me.
You
I
just
always knew I'd do something arty like at some point.
you just hit on something like there was, and I hope it's kind of stopped now, but there always was this kind of opinion that art was kind of the dropout subject, or it was all a little bit dodgy, or a little bit too
It's very
easy or something
hard
like that.
at the leaving cert level, I think, the art course. Yeah.
I think that they've changed the course since it wasn't
Yeah, they have, but they I definitely remember that my final part of the art of the leaving cert was the art history exam. At that point, I just given up. So I didn't study for it. I was like, no, 6
We
years too
actually
many.
we didn't have art in my secondary school. And after the intercert, I said I wanted to do art for my leaving, and the headmaster or the head priest said, I'll go organize it then. So I had to organize, find out if any other kids wanted to do art. And then I had to organize a teacher to come in from Drogheda to teach us on every Wednesday. And organize, like I had to get permission to use one of the science labs as an art room, stuff like that. And no help from teachers or from the school whatsoever. We had to do it all ourselves. So I that's how much I wanted to do art, was that I, 13 years old, ringing a teacher, ringing somebody to ask them to come in and teach us.
That's pretty crazy now.
Yeah,
Just my personal story. Like I was quite lucky. I kind of knew I wanted to do art kind of from primary school level, and I've said this in previous ones, but big influence on me was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As soon as I found out they were made in Ireland, that was it. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in animation, and
when were they made in Ireland?
yeah, they were made in Red Wolf Studios. So I started school in '91, so it was definitely around 1991. They were, yeah, they were around for a while. I knew later on I got to work in a few animation studios. I knew some of the lads that had worked on them, but I know Oisin McGann, the Irish
Oh,
illustrator.
he lives around the corner from me.
Ah, very good. Oisin worked for Fred. There you go. Oisin worked for Fred Wolf Films on Zorro. He did kind of background artwork on
Oh,
that.
okay.
And I know some of the lads, Niall O'Loughlin, the caricature artists, and I think he might have worked in Fred Wolf. But Fred Wolf and Don Bluth were the guys that set up the whole Irish animation studio. I know Ballyfermot
Yeah,
and IADT were kind of set up. Definitely Ballyfermot was set up to train people to work for
Don Bluth. I think the
Don
year that
Bluth.
I started in Ballyfermot was the year that Don Bluth shut up shop and left. So there was kind of nothing. I think Brian Bagg was just starting up then as well. So there wasn't really much option in animation in the very early 90s, because we'd come through our Don Bluth years, and we were kind of in the wilderness for a while.
That's it. But I know Carl Gaffney and the guys from Brownback Films, they had worked in Sullivan Bluth,
Yeah.
and they kind of branched out there and do their own stuff. So that's kind of how all that happened. But I had a really good art teacher. I was very grateful that he kind of I was more into animation, but I did love 2000 AD and things like that. But he was very encouraging. Like he would have showed me artists that would have influenced the artists that I was into. Like I was a big Jim Fitzpatrick fan as well. So he would show me all the Ohm Stones and all the Newgrange and all the designs and stuff like that, and all stuff like Harry Clark and that. But I'm actually still friends with that art teacher, so I was very, very lucky. Um, but yeah, so just one of the other things is just if you want to tell us about your typical kind of working day, Dee. I know we've kind of mentioned how hectic the schedule is, but everyone has a different way of working. You want to tell us your way of working, please?
I think if much like all of you, you work in 3 time zones. Really, you're working with your Irish time zone for your work, and then the Philippines for the flatters that you'd be working with, and then once you finish your Irish day, the American day starts, and your emails start coming in when you're just flagging. So you're up real early. Like I get up like 6 or 7, and I start dealing with processing with flats like very early in the morning because they're coming in from the Philippines then, and then from about 10 onwards is kind of my day Irish time where I work ahead, and then by the time 7 o'clock comes around, that's when all the emails are starting to come in from America with new pages and things like that, and notes and stuff. So it's a very long day. Um, and you have to try your best to get out for walks, do yoga, or take a break. So if you can find yourself looking up and go, oh shit, I've spent 6 hours sitting in front of the computer and I haven't moved. And I find it very hard physically on your body working in comics because you're kind of stuck in a locked off position with your Cintiq or with your mouse or whatever. And if you don't make the effort to get up and stretch and walk or do whatever, you can really do some damage to your body. So it's important to get out and hydrate and exercise.
Very good. Some great advice there. I know from back working in the animation studio that was a big thing as well. You had some of the guys working on layouts and backgrounds, and you'd find them to have shoulder injuries and stuff like that, and wrist injuries. But Trina, do you want to tell us your working day and what you kind of get up to, please?
Right now, it's very much all over the place because of the pandemic. So I do not have a fantastic adult schedule like Dee does. I tend to wake up at about 12, I'd say, 11, 12-ish, depending. I generally kind of do some chores around the house, deal with kind of like some stuff, just because of the new house. Obviously, we're like dealing with plumbing and all sorts of crazy things. And generally, I get to work at about 2, 3. I usually work until about dinner. I take some time off for dinner, and then I kind of work until I'd say about 2 or 3 a.m. is my current schedule. It's not good, and generally I, when I'm more normal, generally I kind of, when I wasn't in kind of pandemic times, I wasn't kind of managing a house. It would be like I'd wake up at about 9 or 10. I would get to work at about 10, 11-ish, and I take the night off then to kind of, but it's all over the place at the moment. But it's kind of the same thing as well, where like I'm generally just managing different balls in the air. We're kind of managing flatters. I have about 2 or 3 people under me, depending, who are like permanent flatters for me, who like work for me. So like managing them, kind of making sure everything's on track, kind of actually physically doing the coloring. I have an assistant as well. I have like a digital assistant who gives me a hand with everything. So she basically manages all the stuff I hate to manage, is like the accounts and like my emails, and like reminding me, Trina, you need to email this person back. I'm the worst sometimes. So she mainly handles all of they mainly handle all of that generally, but the it kind of basically the same. It needs to be better, I know. I shouldn't be going to bed at 2 a.m., but that's I generally try to average in and around about I try to keep it to about 8 hours of work day, but it doesn't always work out. It's been kind of a bit insane at the moment because my dumb ass I bought a house and I panicked, and so I took on way too much work. And now I'm kind of digging myself out of that hole. So we're kind of finally digging out of the hole. We're getting back to more regular schedules. I think that there was a point in April where I was trying to manage the house and I was on about $10 a month, and that was not good. So I had to kind of cut it way down. But anyway, We live and learn.
Buying a house is very stressful. Like
I
I
can
reckon it's the most stressful thing I probably ever did in my
No,
life.
it was really there was a point back in October where I was it was like a second job. I'd get up at like 9 o'clock. I would deal with house stuff until about 6 o'clock. And then I would start to like I remember the day I moved in. I taught a class from like 10 to 1. And then I quickly colored some edits and some Marvel pages, and then I grabbed all my stuff and I shoved my entire life in the back of a van, and then I shoved everything, and I literally I passed out on the couch, the wooden couch I had, the only piece of furniture I had in the house, and I think I just refused to work for like a month because I was like, I'm so tired, I'm just like dead dog tired.
Very good. So Rebecca, do you want to tell us your daily life or your schedule, please?
Yeah, of course. So I mostly try to keep to kind of a 9 to 6-ish schedule, 5 days a week. I definitely didn't do that at the start, and it wasn't good. I learned very, very quickly that that wasn't sustainable. And I have a pretty good idea of what I can handle. So I feel like I kind of owe it to myself to stick to that and try not to make exceptions unless, things happen. Sometimes you have to be a bit flexible. But like Trina and Dee were saying, like we work with different time zones, and that's just part of the job. But like, I don't know, I kind of hope that people will be respectful of my time zone as I am respectful of theirs. So,
Yeah.
I try to live my life as much of a normal person as I can. I really value my evenings with my dog and my partner, so I try to take that time if I can, and always take weekends off. Like very few exceptions for weekends. They're so important.
What's a weekend?
They're really important, Dee. You got to do it.
Dee, I have some news for you. This weekend's a bank holiday weekend. You probably don't know that. You probably don't know what a bank holiday is even.
US bank holiday weekend because no one fucking replies to their emails. You get
Yeah, that Thanksgiving weekend is a godsend. So
And Deborah, do you want to tell us your working week or your life?
Pretty similar to Rebecca, actually. I kind of try to keep it to like 9 to 6, 5 days a week. And I mean, it doesn't always work out that way. And then you'll get kind of, sudden pages that need to be done quickly, or things that like I've kind of had to like wait a few days to do because I'm working on something else. And then it's like, oh no, I have 15 pages that I have to color by tomorrow. So then it'll occasionally be a longer day. But usually if that happens, I try to then like make a little bit of space afterwards. I actually had to do it this week. I had like I'd color an issue quite quickly and then tried to take the next day off. But yeah, usually I try to kind of keep things fairly regular, which regular but flexible is actually kind of what I'm working with, so that I have like this baseline of 9 to 6 and this is what I do, and I don't work weekends, but if I have to, then I'll make a plan for that. So if I have to work a weekend, I'll try and take a day somewhere else. And yeah, it mostly works. Still kind of adjusting and figuring out my limits and what works best, but that's usually kind of how I go. And like again, similarly, the first kind of hour of work that I do is usually just like pottering about, getting my coffee, sorting my flats, checking my emails, all of that kind of stuff. And then I kind of tend to just, settle in and get, hopefully when I'm in the right mood, get just quite focused on what I'm doing. And usually I have a kind of a plan for how much I want to get done in the day. I don't always hit it because I'm a bit over ambitious. But yeah, that's generally what I try to stick to.
So how would the flatter process work? Do you have to arrange that yourself, or would the studio or the publisher arrange that, or would they give you someone?
No, it'd be so nice if they did. No, generally it's on the colorist to it's a whole, actually it is one of those things that's definitely worth talking about for anyone getting into it, because it's a whole production side of it that you don't really realize how much like admin you have to do.
Please tell us that actually, will you? Please.
To source your flatters, source reliable flatters, kind of know how long that they'll take to get stuff turned around. So know like when you need to get it sent, make sure you're getting things sent ahead of time, make sure you have enough flatters to cover all the pages you have. You have to pay for the flats. It's the other part of it. So you have to, take that usually comes out of the colorist pocket, and then getting them all back and having a good organization file system. I actually have revived recently a spreadsheet that I have to kind of keep track of what pages have gone to where and how many inks I have in. And in particular for I'm working on quite a long graphic novel. It's like a 234-page graphic novel. So the inks were kind of coming in different orders, and I had 3 different flatters on it. So I was trying to keep track of that with like a big spreadsheet, so I knew where everything was and at one time. But yeah, it's a whole other side of the process of like the management of it, and particularly if you have books that are running late, sometimes it's a bit of like a scrabble to try and get everything done on time. I had to do it a couple of weeks ago, where I had a book coming in quite last minute, and I knew that I already had I had stuff gone to like Yes Flats, but I already sent flats to them, so I knew I couldn't send more flats to them. And then I had stuff with my other flatter, so I had to put out a call on Twitter to see if anyone was available, which actually worked out very well because I got 2 new flatters on my roster, so that was nice. But yeah, it's a whole project management side of it that I wasn't entirely prepared for.
I don't think anyone ever explained how many different skill sets you need. You've got project management, you've got PR, you've got management, you've got social media management, you've got admin, you've got accounting. There's so many things that you don't realize that you really need to take care of, as well as doing the coloring. Like especially the accounting, that's the worst bit for me. Like I always say I'll do it daily as invoices are paid or invoices are sent, and then at the end of the month I suddenly realize I've got an entire Sunday that I have to spend doing my accounting.
This is why I have an assistant. It has been the best investment I have ever done. They're so fantastic. They just manage everything. Because I was kind of the same, where I was finding I was taking like a week or like a day basically every week to be like, oh God, what's happening? There's this huge amount of emails to go through. I have to log everything into accounts, and I'm not an organized person at all. So they just manage everything in the background, which is a godsend, to be honest. So
very good. And Chris, do you want to tell us your working day, please?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix of everything. Like a few years ago, I had an awful routine, really. Like for at least 6 months straight, I was like working till 5 or 6 in the morning. When it started getting bright, I'd be like, oh, I better go to bed, because I just wouldn't look at the clock. And it was like whatever the books were, it was just kind of like really intensive, or I just wasn't, I suppose, used to doing it and stuff like that. But I'd say I spent like 2 years like in a really unhealthy kind of routine, and I wasn't like getting out or being active or anything. So like I'm still like paying for it now. Like I have a bad shoulder from like hovering over whatever position I was in, because I would have been at like my kitchen counter on like the wrong chair and at the wrong height. So it really like was bad for me, and like even now. But like since like the pandemic, I've tried to like get a proper nice schedule going, and like so at the start of this it was all like whatever crazy stuff stopped and stuff popped up and whatever. So like up until like now, until a few weeks ago, I had like a really nice routine going. I'm like awake naturally earlier before my alarm clock now for the first time since, I don't know, ever probably. And I'm like out like doing loads of walks and a bit of yoga and stuff like that. And my like work week was Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 more or less, roughly around that kind of time frame. Less for a lot of it actually. And that was great. And then just in the last few weeks now, it's kind of gotten a bit wobbly. Some stuff is like been delayed or popped up that I wasn't anticipating, or there's extra work involved or whatever, and it's kind of wobbling a bit now. But so it's kind of hard to kind of keep the non-coloring routine going, or it's like I get antsy now. It's like I need to get out for that walk, because or else I'm not going to feel right later, kind of thing. Like that's kind of in my head. And I was on like I'm on a new comic, and I did like the samples of the pitch for it like ages ago, and it's like popped up now again. It's like it's a good one, or it might be a big one kind of thing. But like I completely misanticipated or misunderestimated like how long the pages take me, or I'd forgotten. It's kind of an art style I don't really work with a lot, and I was like, oh, I'll do that like in this Monday to Friday, and like one page just takes me forever, or it's not like clicking yet. I haven't done enough of them with the artist, so I'm not like in the zone with it. So it's like now instead of no, that's like still hanging there. It's like there's no like set deadline for it yet, or it hasn't approached yet. But that's like hanging there now. So now that's pushing everything else. So everything's getting squished into this like narrower time frame. So it's like it gets kind of stressful like that. And then like you still have to deal with the regular amount of stuff. But then that's all kind of pushing in together. So that's kind of
that's very interesting. I wouldn't have thought the artist would make that much of a difference, or I would have thought it would have been the genre, the different book would have that. But you're saying the artist's work would change it, or would it be the way they send it to you, or is it just the project itself?
Just the project itself. Like I suppose I got into a routine as well. I'm doing time before time, or I did 5 issues of that. That's all. A lot of that's in the can. And that art style is like really simple and it's flats. And I did a lot of that like in a row kind of thing. And it was just so quick. Like I do, like 12 pages a day kind of thing flying through it. Like, and then like the Ice Cream Man in his anthology. So some of the like stories for that don't require, they have a certain look for like a reason and stuff, or you come up with it or whatever. So like there wouldn't be as, I'd be able to like do like a lot of those pages in a day. Sometimes like on some issues, like I'd fly through that, but then like the next one could be like more intensive kind of thing. And then like this thing now was like really kind of complicated detail, and like, that thing where like they do the like light shining and it's like a spatter of Tipex or whatever on the thing. And like it looks great in black and white, but then you have to color it like to work out how it's going to look. And like they're not giving out or anything, it's just like something hard you have to like kind of deal with like that. You could just put a glow over that and it'll cover up the area, like, but like that's not going to look right all the time either or something. But like there's just a lot of it in this art, and it's everywhere. So there's a lot of like things similar to that I'm kind of having to deal with on this one. But I'm doing an Ice Cream Man next, so I'm just trying to power through.
Very good. That's all very, very interesting. So Dee, do you want to tell us how did your lockdown situation, did it affect you much? You're saying, and a lot of you are saying, and it's really cool to hear about your kind of mental health and getting out and taking breaks. And I suppose from just myself, I have a full-time job and I'd be sitting at home and I'd be come home from work after a 12-hour shift and sticking on the Cintiq and doing stupid hours and getting up again. But it's all very interesting what you're all saying there. But how did things change for you in the lockdown, Dee?
It didn't really change. I've been working from home for about 10 years now. So I was fully prepped for lockdown. I don't talk to people at any stage of the day. Uh, uh, I don't go to the pub. I don't go to the cinema. I never leave the house. So lockdown hasn't really changed anything for me, other than the first time in years, all fucking 3 kids in the house at the same time. So we had all the kids here, and uh, 2 adult children and a teenager in the house all day long.
Yeah, I had that. That was just a nightmare. And
it changes your routine considerably.
I'll try to homeschool, and I'll try to using the internet and all this craziness. And um just about yourself, Trina, how do things affect you? Or I know you bought a house as well, so it's all just thrown up in the air for you.
Gosh, yeah. So the first week was a bit strange because I think there was an order for pencils down for artists from like most of the companies. So I was left in this weird limbo of like, do I work? Do I not? Will I be paid for this? But it's kind of the same with the D. We're kind of like I have been molded by the the freelancer lifestyle. I'm fully prepared to kind of just go quiet basically for a year or whatever. So I was kind of basically just working in the background. I always have stuff that I'm doing off in the background anyway. So I had to kind of start I was teaching classes at times, so I had to start kind of doing Zoom classes, which was a bit awkward. And then I started buying a house kind of at the end of August, which was incredibly difficult. So that took up a huge amount of my time. Aside from that, like it's definitely been difficult. I'm not gonna lie. There's like I joke about kind of like the freelancer lifestyle having prepared me for this, but it was very, very isolating, definitely. And as so used to kind of going out in the weekends, and you know, you live in Dublin and you kind of go and see people all the time, go and see my friends, etc. So like there was and we were kind of locked in the house with my family, which is like my brother and my parents, and it was just fine, you know, I don't mind, but there was definitely kind of some testy moments where you're kind of like, you know, we've been stuck in the same, basically the same room for like 3 months. This is getting a bit edgy. So it's been definitely a bit easier now that I have like my own house, because like, you know, it's very distracting to have to deal with everything that's going on here. So that's good in that, at least. And you know, it's nice to have your own place and it's all sorted. Because getting it was a nightmare. There was a divorce, a massive argument halfway through. Like, never buy a house, it is awful. It's done now. Anyway, sorry, Chris, I know you're like, are you in the process of buying one right now, or like saving for one? It's there, going there.
He was up to this conversation. Sorry, Chris.
But yeah, no, it's a bit, but it's definitely been hard, kind of mental health wise. I have to kind of really keep on top of things a lot more than I would usually. But you know, it's one more thing to manage, basically.
Very good. No, you're crazy schedule there, and I don't know how you just manage it. But do you want to tell us about the new book you're doing, Trina, the Amelia Clark project? So I just seen that on Twitter and stuff, and if you're able to tell us anything or some of
Sorry,
the
the Amelia Clark project.
yeah, you working on that?
Am I?
Okay, maybe it's not announced yet.
No, is anyone else working on that? Please.
No, that's you.
Is it?
Well,
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
announced anyway.
Oh,
The
God.
Game of Thrones
Game of
actress.
Thrones lady, Khaleesi.
Trina's-
Oh, right. Sorry, my brain. I'm so sorry. My brain made me jump to kind of like Amelia Arthurs, and I was like,
oh,
"Am
sorry.
I?" Apologies. Yeah, no, I'm working with that with her, and there's a whole bunch of other writers. I was brought on. It's an all-female team, so I was brought on for that. So I'm just in the process of kind of finishing up issue 2. It's going to, well, I can't really say much about it, but kind of like it's really, really interesting to kind of work with her as well. She has some really, really interesting ideas and things. So it's a really, really exciting project. Sorry, I am like all over the place.
No.
People say words, and I'm like, what?
Probably my flat Kildare accent or something through there. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. But yeah.
Rebecca, do you want to tell us how the lockdown affected you, or how was your?
Kind of similar to a lot of the stuff Trina was saying, actually. Like, as far as freelancing goes, totally used to being at home. I actually prefer it. I quite like working at home. But what I was not prepared for was how much I wouldn't like not seeing people for a whole year. Like, I would definitely consider myself to be pretty introverted. I'm not someone who goes out very often. I'm not much of a pub person, but wow, turns out you need to see people and you need to go places and you need to do things. Otherwise, you get really sad. And I think when you do art for your job, it feels like a job. You know, you kind of sometimes stop thinking of it as a creative thing because you have deadlines to hit. You have to do this every day. But I felt like my creative juices were not being restored in the same way that they would be in regular life. Like, things like going on holidays, and God, especially going to conventions, like, nothing revitalizes me and makes me want to create and make art than going to conventions and meeting other artists and just talking about all the projects we're doing. And I miss that so much. It's been really, really hard just not being able to see my peers, I guess. And I think that was probably the most difficult part. I love having my partner around all the time. That's pretty cool. But other than that, yeah, don't recommend another pandemic. I hope it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, look, hopefully we're kind of coming towards the end of it and people are getting vaccinated and stuff like that. So, Darvla, do you want to tell us how it affected you and
Yeah,
what
pretty
your
similar actually. I'd kind of be, yeah, also generally, I'm a kind of like introvert extrovert. Like, I have my moments, but I definitely like the option of going out and seeing people. And I think at the start of the pandemic, it was really tough because I'd only been freelancing for about 4 months when it had started. I'd only been kind of gone full time into comics, like taking the leap of full time going into coloring. for about 4 months, and my plan was to kind of gradually start building up work. And so I was getting at the point where, you know, I was going to be starting some new projects, and I was going to go over to Emerald City Comic Con in the States, and like, so that was kind of the point where that got cancelled, and then we got pencils down, and it felt very like, oh, I've just embarked on this like kind of next stage of my career, and then everything's just stopped. So it was really disheartening. And then I kind of had this like, you know, attitude at the start that I think a lot of people had, where it was like, well, at least this is an opportunity to kind of practice my skills and, you know, catch up on work, and I'll just do some drawing. And, you know, everyone thought they were going to be really productive, and kind of forgot the fact that it's very traumatic and stressful living through a global pandemic when you don't really know what the future holds. So so I ended up not doing any of that. And of course, that I was just kind of like faffing about my house and freaking out about COVID, and like trying to look after my cats, and it ended up kind of long-term things started to fall into place. Like I managed to, you know, get stuff from IKEA and make my like living space and working space a lot more the way that I wanted it to be, and to kind of start figuring out where my boundaries were and where my limits were, because I think spending so much time by yourself at home, you're very face to face with yourself, so you have to figure out a lot of your own kind of like, you know, I don't know, like you figure, like looking at your own mental state a lot and how you work and what you want. And so yeah, it was tough. I think when the work started up again, I found it quite hard to get back into the rhythm of, or like the speed of where it was supposed to be. So I felt like not only did I not catch up during the pencils down time, but I'd somehow fallen behind despite not working, because it was really hard to kind of catch up. But eventually kind of things started, you know, coming together, and like in long term, I definitely learned a lot about kind of being a bit stricter about things like the working schedule and stuff, like, yeah, going for walks. I started doing yoga, started doing regular exercise, and all of that's been really helpful. And I think as well, like, I'm also very happy working at home, but I think the difficulty of working at home is that when you're always at home, then it's always potentially work time. And that was what was tough with the pandemic, because I couldn't be like, well, it's Wednesday, so it's the time to go to my dance class, or, you know, I'm going to stop working because I'm going to meet some friends. It was like, well, I'm going to stop working, but I'm sitting here and the computer's over there, and I know that there's more work to do. And it was very hard to draw those boundaries when you're at home, but you're also like stuck at home. So there's it's kind of like very hard to say I'm not working because I'm just choosing not to work right now, rather than because there's other things going on. So yeah, it was quite it was a tough year, but in a way I'm like, I kind of feel like it wasn't a bad way to start off like a first full year of freelancing, because if I got through that and managed to like survive it mentally and financially, then I'm probably okay for the rest of it.
Well,
So,
you just survived the pandemic as well, or so
yeah.
far, but so you've that as well, you know.
Yeah. So it's not a bad, not ideal start, but it's you know, it's a character building.
No, listen, thanks very much for that. And Chris, you want to tell us your journey, or how the lockdown affected you?
Yeah, it's the same as everyone, like not really in most practical ways, but like, you know, like I suppose in the last year, like I'm more aware of like my mental state than I would have been before. Like as I was saying earlier, like, you know, I used to work stupid hours or be like really harsh on myself, kind of mentally and physically trying to do work. So like way more aware of that now, which is good, like just for going forward and stuff. I think like the main thing was that like I left the house a bit more, so I was seeing the neighbours on their walks a bit more. So they were like, "Are you going to go back to the office after all this?" And you'd explain like, "Oh, sure, I was never in the office," kind of thing. And then you end up telling them your job, and then they don't understand, and you both leave slightly awkwardly. But my partner is a teacher in the city, so she was working from home and doing like classes on Zoom and stuff, and then working afterwards. So when she was like working late, I'd be like, I'm just getting started. Like, it was like I had like a frame of reference of like what normal hours were, or like what like normal people are doing, and when they're stopping and when they're going to watch TV. So then I just kind of slipped into our routine a bit, which was kind of handy. The other thing then was like my friends, we got obsessed with like Zoom quizzes at the start, and like every weekend, but then they like blew into these massive, like over the top, like really convoluted quizzes. And after we did that like for like weeks and weeks every weekend, until the point I was like, all right, I'm just done with Zoom and like socializing with people, because most of my friends don't live in Cork anymore, so seeing them like way too often then through these quizzes, like, it's like I prefer like the monthly or 2 monthly catch up as opposed to like it being in touch every 2 seconds, like, because I know there was no work at the time, so it was granted, like it was fun and stuff, but like now like they're still doing it sometimes. I'm like, nah, I'm just I don't need, I'll go back to my introverted ways upstairs. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that. Folks listening, that absolutely perfect. I just want to thank you all for taking out your time. I'm just going to wrap things up there. Yeah, folks, some amazing insight there, and loads of people who didn't realize colors was a job, and they might have a better idea and what's involved in it. So thanks very much for all the great advice and all those helpful little tips. And even if you're not interested in colors, there's loads of tips and tricks and schedule of work and all that. So really great advice there. So guys, yeah, I just want to like to thank our friends June Fest, and of course Kildare County Council, ARSAC Grant for sponsoring us, and Laois County Council, Artax Grant, and Creative Ireland Laois, and of course the Dunamaze Arts Centre, who is our home in Port Laois. And until the next one, I'll talk to you again. Thanks very much.